Title: The Whispering House. There was a house at the end of our street, old and decrepit, with peeling paint and broken windows. No one had lived there for years. The local kids used to dare each other to go inside, but I never did. There was something off about that house, something that made my skin crawl. One summer night, my friend Sarah and I were walking back from a party. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the neighborhood. As we passed the old house, Sarah, tipsy and emboldened by the alcohol, suggested we go in. I hesitated, but she grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the gate. The gate creaked loudly as we pushed it open. The front yard was overgrown with weeds, and the air smelled of rot. We made our way to the front door, which was ajar. As we stepped inside, the floorboards groaned under our weight. The house was dark, but the moonlight filtered through the broken windows, casting strange shadows on the walls. "Come on, let's check upstairs," Sarah whispered. I followed her, my heart pounding. The staircase was narrow and steep, and I gripped the railing to steady myself. As we reached the top, we heard a faint whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide. The whispers seemed to be coming from a room at the end of the hall. We walked towards it, the floorboards creaking with each step. The door to the room was slightly open, and as we pushed it wider, the whispers stopped. The room was empty, save for an old mirror on the far wall. It was ornate with a gilded frame and looked out of place in the dilapidated house. Sarah walked towards it, her reflection distorted in the cracked glass. As she reached out to touch the mirror, her reflection smiled, a sinister, twisted smile that didn't match her expression. I grabbed Sarah's arm. "We need to get out of here," I said urgently. But she seemed entranced, unable to look away from the mirror. I pulled harder, and she finally turned to face me, her eyes glazed over. "Sarah, snap out of it!" I shouted. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us, and the whispers returned, louder and more frantic. The temperature in the room dropped, and I could see my breath in the air. The mirror began to glow, and Sarah's reflection started to move on its own, pressing its hands against the glass. As if trying to break free, I yanked Sarah away from the mirror and ran towards the door, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices all around us. I could feel them closing in, invisible hands brushing against my skin. Desperate, I pounded on the door, screaming for help. The mirror shattered, and a cold, dark presence filled the room. I felt something wrap around my throat, squeezing the air out of me. Sarah collapsed to the floor, her eyes rolled back into her head. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, the door burst open, and I was pulled out into the hallway. It was Mr. Thompson, an elderly neighbor who had heard our screams. He dragged Sarah and me out of the house and onto the lawn. The whispers ceased, and the air grew warm again. Sarah and I never spoke about what happened that night. We avoided the house and warned others to do the same. A few weeks later, the house burned down. No one knew how the fire started, but I wasn't surprised. Some things are better left in ashes.